Last month, Nintendo finally showed us what the Switch 2 was all about, and since then, more details have continued to emerge. After having some time to process it all, I think it's time to talk about if it's worth it, or if it's turned out to be what we wanted. The price is right about where I was expecting it, but many are still feeling a bit of sticker shock. And at a price that's 50% higher than what the original Switch cost, it just makes sense that people would feel that way. Today, I'm going to be going through first a recap of all the major details and features of the Switch 2, and also how my predictions stacked up against them. Then we'll break down all the reasons you may or may not want to buy one of these this summer. But before we get started, let me say thank you for stopping by my channel. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to like it, and give the channel a subscribe if you'd like to see more of them. I'm still trying to get my channel going here, and I have a goal of hitting 500 subscribers this year, so it would be very much appreciated. Now let's go through my predictions and see how close they stacked up to the actual specs. So first up was the most obvious one. The Switch 2 will indeed support 4K output when docked to your TV, as expected. Meanwhile, the built-in screen will be 1080p, which is a nice upgrade from the original Switch's 720p display. It's LCD, not OLED, but it is an 8-inch screen, and it will support HDR and VRR at up to 120Hz, which additionally should mean that TVs with support for these HDMI 2.1 features will also be able to take advantage of them. However, it was noticed in the past weeks that VRR support for TVs has been mysteriously removed from Nintendo's website. So that may mean that we're not going to get it at launch, but hopefully it will still come at a later date. 120Hz and HDR color are still listed though for your TV. Nvidia has confirmed that the chipset inside the Switch 2 was developed by them and has capabilities for both ray tracing and machine learning like DLSS. We haven't seen many games that are noticeably using Nvidia's AI upscaler yet, particularly from Nintendo, but we do have confirmation that it is supported by the console and it's in use for Cyberpunk 2077 as well as Street Fighter 6. However, we'll have to rely on the seemingly accurate leaks for now on the exact configuration of the chip, until it comes out and someone can dissect one, because Nintendo never discloses those kinds of specs themselves, but I'm pretty sure I called it on this one. Similarly, Nintendo also has not mentioned RAM for the system, but they have confirmed to us that it does indeed have 256 gigabytes of storage on board, and you can use SD Express cards to expand it up to 2 terabytes more. The C button was related to the microphone, just as I expected, and it will be used to bring up Nintendo's new game chat features. That will let you have both voice and video chats with your friends directly through the Switch 2. For the first Switch, this required you use an external phone app if you wanted the ability to talk with friends, but now it will be built into the system with an onboard mic. And chatting is not only for your voice, but also your face. The microphone will be standard, but you can optionally buy a camera add-on and it will integrate your stream right into the game. Now, how well supported this will be for third-party games is yet to be seen, but I would assume all of the first-party Nintendo games with multiplayer will support this fully. The Joy-Cons can indeed be used as mice. However, it seems like this feature will have fairly limited support and may even be optional for most games that do make use of it. Mario Kart probably won't do anything with this ability, but games like Metroid Prime 4 and Splatoon 4 will. And third parties too, like Civilization 7 has been shown off at some early events. The system is mostly backwards compatible with Switch 1 games, however there are about 100 some odd games that don't currently work with the system. But hopefully that list will grow smaller as the year continues. It seems like it's already getting smaller as we go into the past month. Specialized things like Labo and anything requiring IR ports are obviously going to have trouble with this new model, but you can use the old controllers with it, so you may still even be able to play 1-2 Switch on your Switch 2 if you're using those old controllers potentially. Now, it does appear that there will be some level of performance enhancements for games running in backwards compat, just like I was hoping for, but we still don't know how much of an impact it will be for most games. We have gotten hints from the trailer that Switch 2 will cut old games' load times in half, and then even more if it's a native Switch 2 edition patch. A handful of games are getting this 4-pay upgrade option from Nintendo, like the 2 mainline Zeldas, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and the latest Mario Party. However, some will receive free patches, and this is much as we've seen over on the PlayStation with PS4 games running on the PS5. They get enhancements when they're ran in backwards compatibility mode. Sometimes you do have to pay for an upgrade, and it seems like Nintendo is definitely choosing to opt for the paid option in quite a few places here. And so far it seems kind of random which games get what, and we currently know very little about how third parties will be handling all this, so this is still kind of being figured out. There's probably new details that have come out since I've recorded this even. Now, so far my prediction that you would see cartridges that could be played on both the Switch 1 and 2 has not really looked like it's been true. Nothing officially confirmed Nintendo is making it seem like my prediction was right here. However, it has been confirmed that the red Switch 2 cartridge for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is going to contain both the original Switch 1 game and the upgrade pack as two separate files on it for some reason. So it's still possible we could find out later that when inserted into an original Switch, you can still play the original version there as well. The cartridges are mostly identical in form factor, just as the leaked patent had showed us months ago, only differing in color and logos mostly, as well as a small notch in the corner. And then a few days ago, a third-party developer put up on their QA section telling us that they were going to be putting their game out on a red Switch 2 cartridge, but it would be fully playable on the original Switch. So maybe this prediction will turn out to be true after all. We'll just have to wait and see how things turn out. Mario Kart World, the 9th game in the series, is just as expected our Day 1 launch title. However, the next 3D Mario game has been nowhere to be seen. We did get the new 3D Donkey Kong game that was rumored, and that was pretty cool with its world destruction and everything. So now I do think we'll still see that Mario platformer sometime before the end of this year, but I think Nintendo is holding back on it for now, so that their launch titles can have some time to shine without any distractions. I fully expect that sometime shortly after Donkey Kong Bonanza comes out, probably in late July or August, we'll get a direct, and that will finally show us what this new Mario game looks like. And then I also fully expect it to come out sometime before the holiday this year. Could be next spring, but I'm going to say it's probably going to come out before the end of the year. Wind Waker was in fact shown on the Switch 2 during the direct. However, it was on a GameCube emulator, which I'll get into a little bit more in just a moment, but for now, this looks like this particular prediction was a miss for me. But I still think it's possible we could see a port of Wind Waker HD available natively for the Switch 2 and the Switch 1 sometime this year. Metroid Prime 4 did not get as much fanfare as I predicted during the direct. However, since then, this game has indeed become the showcase for the raw power of the Switch 2. Being one of the few games that can be played at 120 FPS, even while in handheld mode. So the look of this game isn't that different between the two systems, kind of like my predictions told you it would be, but the resolutions and the frame rates are much higher now. And with, I think it's going to be a native 4K output when you're playing docked in 60Hz mode. No upscaling. That's pretty impressive for a hybrid handheld console like this. And now, as I hinted at earlier, GameCube games were confirmed to be coming to NSO. When used with the Switch 2, of course, not for Switch 1. I did mess up at the end of that last video, and where I had the text on screen and where I said it. I said Nintendo 64 for some reason. I meant to say GameCube there, just like I had said earlier in the video when I was talking about it at length. But yeah, that was a bit of a flub there on that last video. That final prediction video was put out in a bit of a rush, but I've got it corrected here. And yes, I did call this one. GameCube is here just as I expected. Okay, time to talk about price. I definitely did not quite get this one right. I was in the ballpark, not too far off, but the idea that the Switch 1 dock would cleverly be used to help keep the cost down and have the dock sold separately, that doesn't seem to be true. And so I was wrong. The Switch 2 was not available dockless at $400. And then when it comes to the dock, I actually overshot it by a few bucks. The system and dock will only be $450, and so far, Nintendo isn't raising that price due to tariffs. However, it does seem that every single Switch 2 accessory is going up by an extra $5 or so. So on this one, I'm going to call this a loss on my part, but I was really close. And speaking of close, I was off by 1 day. The Switch 2 is actually coming out on June 5th, not June 6th like I had predicted, June 5th, which is a Thursday rather than a Friday. And now I had heard from some other predictors out there saying that it was going to be a Thursday because games had been coming out for Thursdays. I wasn't really buying it, but yeah, it's coming out on a Thursday. Weird day in my opinion to be releasing something like this, just smack in the middle of the week, but Whatever, June 5th is the day. Now, you don't see it on the chart here, but my original prediction was that the launch would be somewhere between May 30th and June 6th. So that actually is still true, and I'm pretty much right on the money with that range I gave. So I can't count this as a complete victory, but I do think I'll count this one as a half win. And so looking at this scoreboard overall, I'm feeling pretty good. Of course, I wasn't 100% right on the money, but I was pretty close with a lot of this. And obviously, it's not just all my intuition. A good portion of this was informed by the leaks and rumors coming out of the general gaming community that have been coming out for many years now. But yeah, for the majority of these, I got it. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. So that sums up most of the details about the Switch 2. It's bigger, it's more powerful, it can do 4K now, the screen is super fast, and it's mostly backwards compatible. Is that extra power going to be enough to sway you? I think when we look at the broader general Switch audience, many are probably perfectly content with what the old system already offers them. So whether or not you care about performance and graphics here will be a big factor into if the Switch 2 is right for you. Now then, if a newer, fancier Switch isn't enough to sell you, let's talk about games. Switch 1 will continue to get a few more games from Nintendo over the next year or so, but after that, if you want to play the latest Nintendo game, you're going to have to get a Switch 2. For right now, during the launch, that only really means Mario Kart and this Donkey Kong Bonanza game are going to be the things you can't play. But when the next Zelda or Mario platformer come out, you're going to be required to upgrade. And then, when it comes to third-party games, you should expect massive support for the new system. A lot of games were very difficult to get running on that original system, and they're going to have a much easier time now with this more powerful hardware. It's not as powerful as PS5, but just about any Gen 9 game seems like it should be capable of running on the new Switch. Games that use Unreal Engine 5, games like the new Indiana Jones that require ray tracing even on the lowest settings. So if this Switch is your only console, you'll definitely want to upgrade sometime over the next few years if you still want to keep receiving the latest games. Alright, I think we've covered pretty well why you would want a Switch 2, but can you afford one? This is the biggest, most important question, I think. The model for many years has been to try and sell consumers game consoles at a fairly low price so that you can expand that player base and get as wide of an audience as possible. But at $450, even with modern inflation, no one's calling this thing cheap. It's not crazy expensive, it's not PS5 Pro expensive, and it's certainly cheaper than a decent gaming PC, but this new system is not going to be a simple impulse buy for the vast majority of people in the world. Things are getting crazier and crazier lately, and many are struggling to survive in the current economy, so obviously if you don't have the money for this system, don't put yourself in a bad position just because you think you really need it. The system will be around for a good 10 years from now, I'm sure, and it's okay to wait, but if you can't afford one, and you are interested, does the price seem right to you? You used to be able to get a Series S for $300, sometimes even less if there was a sale, but of course, all of that has changed recently as Microsoft has raised the price on all their hardware, now putting the cheapest model of the Series S at $380. So that's the new minimum if you want to keep up with the latest games. And currently, although that could change soon, the PS5 All Digital with no disk drive is only $400 still. So as of this recording, technically the Switch 2 costs more than both the PS5 and the Xbox, making Nintendo the most expensive of the big three when we only look at their lowest tier models, of course. Which is the opposite of positions that Nintendo took 20 years ago with the Wii, when they said they no longer wanted to try to compete, they wanted to try to do this lower cost option. And we compare it to the $700 PS5 Pro, or other PC handhelds that sometimes go up to close to $1,000 sometimes. Or even the 2TB Xbox Series X that is now $730 somehow. The $450 doesn't sound that bad in comparison. And so yeah, the price is not great, but it does seem mostly in line with the prices of their competition. However, that's just the console side of the equation. We're also seeing that $80 seems like it's going to be the standard price for AAA games on the Switch 2. Mario Kart, as well as the new enhanced editions of Kirby and Mario Party will all be $80. As well, others like the new Donkey Kong or the enhanced editions of Zelda are going to stick to the more traditional $70 that we've seen for the last few years. And that's not even taking into account DLC. So games are going to be pretty expensive for this new console, making the cost of the system fairly negligible in comparison over the course of its lifespan, I'd say. But Microsoft's charging $80 for their games now too, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sony followed suit in the very near future. So now ultimately the choice is up to you. Do you want a Switch 2? Can you afford one? Or do you want to wait off a little while and get one when more games come out? I wouldn't hold my breath for any price drops. I don't foresee that happening at all unless the system is an absolute flop at launch and Nintendo is forced to lower prices, and I just don't think that's going to happen. It could, however, go up. World inflation could continue to grow, and this US tariff situation is in constant flux, so we could see something change at pretty much any time here in the US. But I think $449 is here to stay as the minimum you're going to be paying. And if that price seems reasonable to you, you should go ahead and get one. And if you're a huge Mario Kart fan, then why wait? The bundle with it and the system will save you $30, and it's only going to be available through this Christmas. Alright, now to finish things up, here are my own personal thoughts. Am I buying a Switch 2? Probably not. Not at launch, at least. So far, I've yet to see that this system is going to give me that kind of boost I was really hoping for out of my older software. I just don't know that back compat is going to make it worth my while. I do have the expansion pass, so technically Breath of the Wild would get a free expansion, as would Tears of the Kingdom, but I just don't know that it's compelling enough to get me to spend that much money right now with the state of things in this world and my own personal life. And Mario Kart is great, it's a lot of fun, but it's not enough to get me to buy a new system. All my third-party games are still going to run better on the PS5 Pro, so it's really just Nintendo games I'm looking at to put on the system here. I'm sure I'll eventually buy one at some point in the next few years, but for right now, I think I'm going to wait it out and see what other games will be coming out later this year in 2026. Thanks for watching. So yeah, the Switch 2 looks cool, but I'm still not quite as excited as I hoped I would be on it. But this video was interesting to make. This was my very first fully scripted video. In the past, all my other videos, I just kind of sit down with maybe a basic outline and just start talking and then try to clean it up in the edit. But this one I actually wrote down beforehand, so we'll see how that goes with people. I'm also off screen for this one, which is part of that process. So yeah, we'll see how people feel about that. Let me know what you think about this format in the comments. You know, if I don't need to be on screen, I don't guess there's no sense in spending all that time trying to set up lighting and things for it. So let me know what you think. And yeah, let me know if you're getting a Switch 2. And like, subscribe, do all those things, and I'll see you next time.